COVID-19 has stunted economic growth worldwide, and one of the key economic themes that will likely dominate the post-COVID-19 world will be that of a decline in globalization. The last time the world got disenchanted with globalization and trade was during the Great Depression that began around 1929, and this trend might resurface post-COVID, initial trailers of which had been witnessed even prior to the COVID-19 outbreak with the US-China trade wars. Witnessing what might perhaps be the global localization, we look back at the Turkish economy and its response to the Great Depression. How did the state respond to the challenges of a collapse in commodity prices and that of a scarcity of essentials? Why did the economy emerge stronger? What can we learn from history? Today, we will be revisiting Turkish history that formed after the War of Independence in 1922 under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk.
There were two foundations to the Turkish national economy: political negotiations like the 1924 Lausanne Peace Treaty, and economic policies geared towards creating a robust domestic industry. The Lausanne Treaty played an important role in the globalization of the Turkish economy, as free trade treaties were abolished, tariffs as high as 13% were introduced on imports, and the Ottoman external debt was renegotiated. The creation of the domestic economy through modernization and industrialization began with the development of an extensive railway network, connecting rural Turkey to urban centers and thus integrating the entire domestic market. In 1927, the law for encouragement of industry was introduced, which saw government subsidies flowing into sectors like food processing, textile, cement, and construction. The most important development in this period, however, was the abolition of the agricultural usher, a form of tax in the preceding Ottoman Empire which used to place an unfair amount of burden on small producers. With this, large landowners and moneylenders lost the mechanism to extract agricultural surpluses, thus incentivizing and consequently raising Turkey's agricultural output.
The Great Depression was marked by a decline in global trade. The slowdown hit Turkey via the crash in prices for agricultural commodities, which were Turkey's main export to the world at the time. The foreign exchange crisis that followed the commodity price crash led the Turkish government prioritizing localization and import substitution over global trade as an engine for economic growth. Consequently, Turkish GDP in the 1930s was driven by two things: private sector manufacturing growth spurred by incentives and subsidies, and redistribution of agricultural surplus in the urban centers to drive industrialization, which was further aided by an extensive development of railways that mobilized output from rural to urban centers.
Crucial to this new strategy was an even more protectionist approach to policy making. Rationing of food imports were introduced, and import duties were further raised. Consequently, the decline in imports to GDP outweighed the fall in exports to GDP, bringing in a sustained period of foreign trade surplus up until World War II. Turkey's weak forex position further motivated its deglobalization efforts, with the government introducing barter agreements in bilateral trade and demands for resettling its external debt. Severe import restrictions created attractive conditions for domestic manufacturers post-1929 and led to their growth in the 1930s. However, the expansion of the industrial sector was primarily aided by the growth in Turkey's agricultural output. The introduction of price support programs in 1932 helped farmers sell at a preset price to the state, even as global agricultural prices crashed. This also helped the state use its agricultural surplus to further catalyze the industrialization process in the urban centers. Thus began Turkey's transition from an agro-based economy to a manufacturing economy.
Turkey's response to counter the impact of shrinking global trade while clocking domestic revival is ever more relevant today. Decreasing trade, crashing commodity prices, along with the COVID-induced slowdown, has been met with protectionist policy making. This could be the beginning of Go Local. Whether this is prudent policy making or a knee-jerk overreaction, only time will tell. After all, Hindsight is 2020.